Tom Purvis was best known for his work in the advertisement scene. His career started in the early 1900s with works for the advertising agency Morpher and Crawford. He later went on to do his best known works for the likes of L&ER Railways and the men's clothing brand Austin Reed. It was here where his unique style really took a turn and developed into being that of liminal space and block colour, which gave him his sharpness and style. One interesting influence of Purvis is the Beggarstaff brothers. Their use of cut-out paper and highly simplified composition in their 1895 Harper piece can be compared to Purvis's piece for Austin Reed in the 1920s. I really find it interesting how Beggarstaff work eliminates any essential elements or components of figure scenes by not drawing an outline, and we can really see this in Purvis's work, where he simply uses shapes and colour and doesn't create any outlines. One fellow artist of the interwar time period, McKnight Crawford, demonstrates elements of symbolism which Purvis's work lacked. Instead, it was much more literal. Crawford's use of playfulness and colour created expressive lettering in his works. He would therefore fuse together the worlds of typography, photography and illustration in his work, to me giving a much more cinematic kind of effect. And I think that this personally was more effective and bold. It was more of a message and a meaning rather than Purvis's just being simply advertisement for a certain holiday destination. Another interesting influence is the Japanese artist Sada Hyde. His Yokohama Traders piece, composed of 5 separate posters joined together to create a panorama shot. This can be compared to East Coast Joys by Purvis, which was merged together into a panoramic imagery as well. I think it's really interesting, the silhouettes in their works and the use of blues. I think that the intricate detailing on the Japanese artists creates a much more effective but monotone and almost somber look to the piece, whereas Purvis's is obviously trying to advertise a certain place and be much more happy and cheery. And I think that they're just two completely different, they're trying to convey two completely different meanings, and I think it's really interesting having that in mind, considering how they've used the same techniques. It's almost to me like they're two completely different works but with two of the same techniques. And I also found it interesting how I did a similar effect and similar technique when I started drawing these made up worlds in my head a year ago, prior to even knowing about this artist. I then went on to look into different mood boards and colour inspiration, and I really found it interesting looking at album cover artwork and the simplicity of advertising an album in today's society compared to a place where we can just see it online. Therefore, I believe to take my final piece into something of an album cover artwork style, maybe a lino print or a wood block. I initially started by drawing out simplistic lines in the style of Tom Purvis, and then took it into my own way. And I looked into the dance scene and jungle music and faces and the effects of everything around us to our faces and how this would affect how I drew. So I started drawing in a much more simplistic and block colour way. I then looked into the movement of the body, and I started drawing as simple as I could, simple doodle men and faces, and I was playing about with compositions, and I really enjoyed this and the use of colour, and I can put them both together, and it created this. It was almost like I could picture this as a big advertising scene for an event or a club. I will continue to look into this, and I would like to look further into the Dada movement. I'm currently at a place where I'm drawing in the most simplistic way and taken back to the childhood ways in which we draw with so much freedom, and I really want this to resonate through my final piece and my artwork.